Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. It's like 4 a.m. here in central Iowa. And I forgot to record an episode. I was going to do it last night and didn't do it, but I wanted to get this out before I met with my APPE students later this morning. They don't get here till like 8:30 or so. But I got to take the kiddos to Living History Farms for a last day of that. But a lot to talk about. The biggest thing I'll talk about, but I think I'm going to actually save it till the end, is the new pharmacy compensation survey put out by Pharmacy Week on Pharmacy Week's blog. And that's just going to take a lot of time to talk about. So let me talk first about what's going on with the pharmacy leaders that are out there blogging and vlogging. Let's see. So TLDR Pharmacy, he hasn't put anything out since June 9th, but I wanted to give him a shout out. Thank you for spreading the word about my new book. I had some free audiobook codes for the Memorizing Pharmacology Mnemonics, pharmacy flashcards and fill-ins for the future nurse, doctor, physician assistant, and pharmacist. And I put all of those in there because, again, I want this to be interprofessional. I want people to be able to talk about it and like, oh, that was a cool mnemonic. That's an easy way to remember, all the SSRIs, like UPS affect. So your affect is your mood. So, paroxetine, sertraline, fluoxetine, fluvoxamine, escitalopram, citalopram, and then the T for titrate up, so you don't actually cause anxiety. You take your time getting them on board. But I appreciate TLDR spreading the word with his email list. I think he was doing BCOP, which is the oncology pharmacy from the Board of Pharmacy Specialties, which I'm sure was a very difficult test. And I think he's got something going on with a new job. So thanks again to Brandon Dyson at TLDR. Happy PharmD had a couple new blog posts. So Alex Barker talked about the difference between a CV and a resume. And pharmacists actually need both, and he explains why that is. I have all of my APPE students work on their LinkedIn while they're here with me because really... that's where people are going to find you. And Paul Tran has mentioned that every couple of months he gets another email about people looking to hire him. But he already has 4 jobs, so maybe he's looking for a 5th. I don't know. I think he's actually doing some cool stuff with Home Depot and things like that, not related to pharmacy. Jackie Boyle, she did a blog post called Multi-Passionate, and I remember Aaron L. Albert talking about multi-patientals, and maybe that's where it comes from. The word multi-patiental comes from because I never understood what that word really meant. I thought it just meant multiple jobs or something like that. But in terms of knowing that you have these multiple things that you want to go into, pharmacy certainly isn't. I've got this one job and this is the only thing I'm going to do. I think there's many, many things that we want to do, and she does a good job kind of going over how to, you don't want to go in all directions. You want to go in one direction at a time, but you can certainly have them all in your life. So I definitely recommend her blog post. One that I follow that I haven't really mentioned much, but Pharmacy in Practice, it's actually out of Scotland. It's pharmacyinpractice.scot. And they had a guest blog talking about psychiatry and how somebody talking about medical school and kind of deciding, how they made their decisions. And anyway, I like Pharm in Practice. It's something that I tend to follow, and it's just kind of neat to see perspectives from across the pond. Let's see. So the podcasts next week, we're going to have a couple of people. Someone that wrote a book that was very successful, and she had a bit of tragedy happen in her life, and I don't want to create a spoiler, but it was just that there are some tragedies that defy defy, what you would normally be able to handle. And this is Christine McAllister, and she talks about how you replace your income. And she's talking about the numbers that we usually make, around the 100,000 and higher than that, really, and how to do that and how she did it, but how she did it after what was a terrible, terrible tragedy. Then on Wednesday, I think I'm going to move one of my podcasts from the Ankeny podcast because it was with a pharmacist local here in town, and kind of I talk about how if you want to highlight a pharmacy that's in your town, happy to publish the episode. But it was just an interview with one of the pharmacies that's literally a couple miles down the road from me, and she has ties to another person in the Pharmacy Podcast Network. So those two episodes, and then I think I'm going to talk about home buying, the difference between house, townhouse, and condo, and then renting, maybe those three as well. So I haven't talked about the real estate too much, but I'm deep into it right now as my hopefully home closes early July. So it's going to be another week away. But excited to get the keys to that new place. Thanks to your Financial Pharmacist team for having me on. It titled One Pharmacist's Journey from Financial Ignorance to Financial Independence. We always hear the term FI as financial independence, but really where it starts is financial ignorance. I just had no idea what I was doing when I got out, and I don't necessarily... Some of my habits I haven't really changed, like I still don't budget, but I just look at the end of the year and do I have more than I had the year before? Yep. All right. Well, I feel like I did a good job. But I really take the time to talk about how I made many mistakes. Tim talked about how he made many mistakes. And really, we're just trying to make things better for other people, trying to help them with some of the advice, just with the perspective we have, having been out a decade and 2 decades, respectively. So hopefully you'll get a chance to go over the YFP, and it's at yourfinancialpharmacist.com, and then the podcast link, I'm there in episode 53. Real Life Pharmacology from Eric Christensen of MedEd 101. This is cool because it's like Pharmacy Joe for pharmacology, and Pharmacy Joe limits it to like 7 minutes. I don't know how he does it, but he's like always like right at 7 minutes, and Eric's done the same thing, somewhere between 7 and 14 minutes, just to talk about one particular pharmacology topic. This last one was on tramadol, the one before it was on phenytoin, and so forth. So he's pretty consistent. Every week, a new pharmacology podcast episode, and I definitely recommend his podcast. Hillary Blackburn, I haven't heard anything from her from the Talk to Your Pharmacist podcast, but if you've not gone back through her backlist, she's got 41 episodes. Definitely recommend her podcast as well. Let's see. I missed RX Radio, I think. I don't know if there's... Usually it pops up if there was anything new, so I'll wait till that loads. But the mothership, Pharmacy Future Leaders with... it's Whitney. I don't remember how to pronounce the last name. It's L-Y. But she talks about going to, I want to say it was Honduras. They were supposed to go to Nicaragua, and I'm hearing more about this from many schools in terms of getting this, experience abroad, and I definitely recommend it. You don't have to do this a whole week where you go into a country that's underserved, though obviously that's an amazing experience. Honestly, just going to Ireland when we went for vacation, and just seeing how things are different, where you can just walk up to the pharmacist, you can get diclofenac cream over the counter, you can, it's just like 10 pounds or whatever it was, or 10 euros, 10, 15 euros. And just seeing how different it is and appreciating what it is to be in a different country. Really like the topic of the Waypoint Financial Group's, or Ben Coakley's Working to Live or Living to Work. that was, that is really one of those things where they talk in the beginning of the episode and kind of divide it into, you want to spend time with family, you want to spend some time at work and your hobbies and passions, and how do you decide where to put the money and which way to go with the money. And then Pharmacy Inspection Podcast had a triple episode, I think, on Monday. Advanced Compounding Education, 795 Proposed Revision, and then Christine Russell, I think is how you pronounce her last name, who's the Assistant Director of Pharmacy down at Doylestown Hospital in Pennsylvania. So 5 episodes from the Pharmacy Podcast Network. And then I don't know if, I didn't think RX Radio had anything new, but if you are listening, Dr. Richard Waith, I would like to hear what you think of the news coming out of Amazon. So my understanding is that Walmart passed on buying PillPack because they wouldn't pay $1 billion, and Amazon's like, $1 billion? That's a rounding error. I'll buy it for $1 billion. And I don't know too much about it, but I would be curious to hear experts like Richard Waith and Core Consult and Adam Martin, those guys. Hopefully they'll be able to kind of shed some light on what the Amazon thing means. I know those guys are big into Alexa and kind of understanding how the technology is moving forward, how you can really take advantage of people just not really understanding Alexa and the power that it has. And it's really ground floor, and now is the time to get in on those kinds of things. But Amazon's buying PillPack for $1 billion, and so they said they're not getting into pharmacy, but it seems like they are. We'll see how that kind of works out. And I'm sure it's going to be a disruption, just like the Express Scripts putting out the red box pharmacies, basically is what it is, where you can just go up to it, and I can already see how it's going to go. At first, I think there's going to be some hesitance to adopt it, but once people see the convenience, I can see how they're definitely going to adopt it. But as retail pharmacists or past retail pharmacists, we're kind of, the speed at which patients expect to move through the line, and they say, we can get it done in 90 seconds. Well, you go ahead and count backwards from 90 and see how that's going to go. So even if they got it at the full speed, it's just going to be like, what? And the thing is that you can't go to the side. So the big thing with pharmacy right now is, you go to pick up your prescription, and then somebody says, okay, pharmacist counsel, and then that's to the side, and then the next person can go. But with this machine, I have my master's in human-computer interaction. The one thing that they didn't really think about was, only one person can use it at a time. So what you would really have wanted to do was create like this kind of double-faced machine where on one side is dispensing, and then on the other side you actually talk to the person. Because what's going to do, you want to really have 2 lines. One line to pick up product, one line to talk to the pharmacist. But if you create that as the same line, that means that the person's going to, feel uncomfortable that the person behind them is just looking at their back with like laser eyes and like, hey, are you done? Are you done with your counseling? How are you going to keep somebody back far enough that you can protect their, private information? Is the person even going to talk to the pharmacist? Like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about this very private thing, and then there's a person right behind you. Hey, are you almost done? Like, why are you still there? 90 seconds is over and so forth. So I think it's going to be kind of an interesting development, but if I had built that thing, I would have made 2 sides to it, so the person can get counseled on one side, and then even better, have those like voting booth, like blinders, and maybe some soundproofing or something like that. Make it more like you can kind of go into one of those photo booths where you can kind of just go in behind the curtain and talk to somebody. But putting product and counseling in the exact same front place is ridiculous. Like that's just silly. It's like somebody. It's like if the red box were to have like audio, where somebody goes in and is like, hey, that's an R-rated movie. That's an R-rated movie. And, you know, some like 12-year-old or 14-year-old kid is in front of it and like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So I just think that there's going to be some definite growing pains with that new Express Scripts Red Box that's coming out. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Let's talk about the videos before we talk about the salary survey. So Brian Fung, he went 15 minutes into his Hopkins experience, and he stayed up in Charles Village, and that was a little bit of ways from where they were meeting. I know, you know, you're going to a different town, and you know, you decide to stay one place versus another, but I would have stayed in Canton. Well, I'm assuming that the public health is just, you know, on the medical campus, but in Canton you can go straight north on Wolf Street and get right to Hopkins in a couple miles. So, but I would have stayed by the water in Canton. That's just me. But he has a 15-minute video about his MPH in Hopkins. He's obviously very happy about it. Really enjoys what's going on there and what he's doing. Kevin Yee. I didn't get the last one. He said why I quit pharmacy, but I get why he left his last job, but I didn't get why I didn't get that he quit pharmacy. Like it sounded like, I know he quit a pharmacy job, but I think he went to a different pharmacy job. I'm just not sure. And then he's got the don't do pharmacy one. I haven't listened to it yet because that was just 14 hours ago. So Paul Tran had 2 episodes, so talking about night shift sleep schedule, and then reaction to Paul Tran, how to transition from retail to hospital pharmacy. So I think it's Paul, Brian, and Kevin all in one package. I'm not sure, but I'll listen to that one a little bit later. All right, so piece de resistance. Let's talk about the salary compensation survey over at Pharmacy Week. So the first thing to know is that it's not for you. The people that make this survey, they're making the survey to sell it to the companies so they don't overpay you. Buying the survey costs, I think, somewhere between $5,000 and $12,000. That's 3 zeros at the end of that. It's tremendously comprehensive, and it's meant for those executives at companies who need to know, okay, well, I have, 30 stores in this region. I'm paying my pharmacist this much. Am I paying too much? Am I paying too little? Where do I stand? That's really where it's for. So when a company has billions of dollars, $5,000, $10,000 is, super rounding error. It's just not a big deal. Some things to know. So again, I know how much work it takes to do something like this. So certainly commend them for figuring that out. But I want to make sure that you don't misread it as, well, if this is happening, then I should do this. I guess that's my big concern. So it says there were 346,115 incumbents, and I want to make clear that they did not talk to 346,000 people. It's just that the 303 organizations have 346,000 people. So there are fewer organizations that were participating. There were more people that were hired by these fewer organizations, and we know that that's true, right? With the mergers and things like that, we got it. And that there's more positions, which also speaks to something good, that there are more different things that as a pharmacist we can do. There's a lot of topics to go over, and I just want to kind of go over some of the highlights, and really it's just making sure that you understand what this means. So some of the big kind of headline, I'll go over the headline first. So the staff pharmacist retail drop for the first time ever. And if you look at the numerical drop, I think it was 35 cents an hour. And I'll tell you why that drop is actually underreported, not overreported. And then the healthcare retail satellite pharmacists increased 23%. and the hospital technicians earn 54% more than retail technicians. So let's take those one at a time. The staff pharmacist retail dropped. Let me look at the actual number. I think it went from $61.35 in 2017 to $60.95 this year. And what that's saying, so it's going to go below pre-2016 numbers if this continues and we're going the other way. And certainly we've had some exponential increase in our salaries as things have gone. When I graduated, it was $60,000 a year. Now the base pay is like double that. But then again, I paid $4,000 a year for college. And so what somebody would say is, oh, well, I should move to hospital pharmacy. It pays $3 more an hour. Or, and things like that. Or clinical pharmacist pays a little bit more than retail. Or I should be in a healthcare retail satellite. And it says that it went from $65 in 2016, then $76 in 2017, then $81 an hour in 2018. So, what is that? What is that it pays $20 more an hour? And usually a job is inversely proportional to the quality of life. So it makes it sound like you should not be a mail order pharmacist because that pays the least. And I've worked for mail order. I worked for Express Scripts, and I absolutely loved it. It felt a little bit like being at a factory, but I loved that we had 15-minute breaks. I loved that we had full hour-long lunches, and I ended up taking a full-time job as I want to say, did I take? No. I came from a supermarket job where I was a pharmacy manager, and then I think I moved home after that. But I really enjoyed it. I kind of liked it was like 7 to 3 or something like that, and it was just I had time to talk to other people that were there. I had time to meet people that were there. I did some counseling and things like that, and a lot of times I was on the factory line. But of the jobs, like I was sitting down all day, it was just a very, very cool job. And I just really enjoyed it, and I felt like I could do that for a long time. But it was just at a place in my life that I was like, I just want to go home. I just wanted to go back to Maryland. But the first thing is that if you're looking at yourself by hourly pay, you're looking at yourself as a worker bee. And I think that heard the YFP team talking about how people will talk about money in the month versus kind of looking long term and things like that. So you punch in your clock and you trade time for money, and that's a lot of money to trade time for, but you're still trading time for money. And I'd encourage you to read or listen to the first even just I think it's the first 2 chapters of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I think it's his dad. The rich dad that challenges him and says, okay, well, I'll pay you this much, and then I'll pay you this much. And he finally gets the picture to some extent that, okay, I get what you're doing. You're saying that, I'm going to eventually have a price that I'm willing to sell for, and that I should be a little more entrepreneurial about things. So in terms of hourly pay, this is also a bit deceiving in that, you could have somebody that's only been given 24 hours or 32 hours, and they wanted 40 hours. So they might be getting $60 an hour, but they're only getting 3/4, 4/5 of what they really wanted in terms of a salary. So if all things were perfect, what you would really want to do is you go to somebody that says, I'm a pharmacist. You look at their income tax statement, and you see how much they made. Because if you were to look at me and you were to look at my pharmacist salary, you would say, "Oh my gosh, this guy's making nothing." But I actually, I make more than that healthcare retail satellite guy. So I think I come in around $90 an hour is what I make a year. So and it's not from this job; it's just from all sources of income. And it's going to go up because I've got the new place. So paying yourself, investing in yourself, working entrepreneurially, don't worry about the hourly pay. That's a great thing that, we're still making 60 an hour or whatever it is, that you're freaking out that we're down 35 cents to $60 an hour still. That's just ridiculous talk. Anyway, the first kind of thought is, get away from the hourly. Start thinking about things in terms of amount of money that you're going to make in the year, or even in the month is fine, just as long as you've got something else going on besides just pharmacy, because it is absolutely disrupted right now. The other thing is to look at pharmacy technicians, and it's obviously there's a huge disparity between hospital and retail, and we should think about why that is. When somebody hires a hospital pharmacy technician, they don't really tend to hire a ton of part-time people. So those hospital jobs are a little bit harder to get, but they're certainly ones that pay more. But that person's probably been there a long time. When you talk about retail, there's a lot of part-time help. There's a ton of turnover. And so if you were to kind of like look at how long they've been there and how much they make for how long they've been there, I feel like that number would kind of get a little closer together. That, somebody that's at, a hospital for 10 years and then a retail pharmacy for 10 years, those would probably be a bit closer, because they would be a lead technician and it would be a little bit closer that way. The Greek tragedy, of course, is the the resident pay. I'm really not sure. So this is a bit misleading in that they separate hospital pharmacists from the residents, because a resident is a hospital pharmacist working in a hospital, and that they say, well, they're a resident. And yeah, I get that, and I get why you would separate it when you're talking about hourly. But if you look at the number of, so they're very excited that they added 1,500 new positions in residency, and what that means is that you multiply 1,500 times, the difference, which is about 80,000 between what the person would make as a full-time employee, and I don't know how that number wouldn't go down if you have 1,500, because that's $120 million that changed. So 5 years ago, there was $120 million more dollars coming to this group of 1,500, and then now we've lost that $120 million per year because of all these residencies. So I don't understand how there's just a barely move on the needle with that. But I'm trying to find the resident pay. I want to say it went up like $1. And it's really kind of a silly way to talk about resident pay, because residents don't get paid by the hour. They get paid a salary for the year, and I don't know what. Here it is. There it is. So median hourly pay of a newly licensed pharmacy resident went from $22 in 2016 to $23.32 in 2017 to $23.56 as a pharmacy resident. But what that's doing is saying that's a 40-hour week. And if you know residents, that's a ridiculous thing to think about, because they don't work 40-hour weeks. So that the average pharmacy residency salary, what they're saying, is $49,000. But the average resident is probably going to work closer to 50 hours, which means that we're kind of, so if you've got that, let me get it right. So if you've got $942 a month or a week, then you're at $49,000 for the year. Okay, but if you divide that by the number of hours that you actually work, which is closer to 2,500, you're making $19 an hour, and then if you divide it by, which is $19 an hour, and then if you multiply that times, the 40-hour salary, you're kind of figuring that, okay, wait, I'm only making, X number of dollars an hour. So where the hourly, I think, is actually helpful is to figure out, okay, well, I'm a pharmacy resident, I'm making $49,000 a year. What is that per hour? And I feel like it's $19 an hour if you it's $19 an hour if you break it down at 50 hours a week. And it's, I want to say $16 an hour if you do it by 60, because it'll be 60 times 50, which makes 3,000 hours. And so, yeah, you're making $16 an hour. So, sorry I went all on the tangent there, but if you're a pharmacy resident and you are working 40 hours a week, then on average you will make $23.50 an hour. That's the number. If you are working 50 hours a week, you're down to $19 an hour. And if you are working 60 hours a week, you are down to $16 an hour. And if you're working more than that, I wouldn't do the math, because then you would just cry. But just to make clear, that $23.56 an hour, you don't get more. You don't go up to $14.13 a week, which would be a salary of $73,000. Okay, so just to make clear, that hourliness comes from a 40-hour benchmark, which is simply that's simply a fiction. So, do pharmacy technicians make more than pharmacy residents? The answer would be yes, especially if the pharmacy technician works more than 40 hours a week. So pharmacy technician supervisor makes $25.28 an hour. Pharmacy resident makes $22 an hour. And then if if a pharmacy technician works extra 10 hours, they get an extra, 10 hours worth of pay. If a pharmacy resident works an extra 10 hours, it's just part of their salary. Anyway, so I kind of went a little bit long this week, but I thought it was important to talk about that and what it really means. And honestly, if you want one take-home point from this whole thing, do not let your pharmacy salary be your only salary. There is tremendous opportunities. Every time you walk into any place, you see they're hiring. Take this time in this fantastic economy with these fantastic job opportunities, and many of you are only getting 32 hours anyway. But go do another job. Go do something that you're like, man, if I didn't have to worry about money, I would do blank. I guarantee it's, one, going to be fulfilling and make you feel better about things. Two, it'll bring in a little bit of money. But three, it may lead to something a lot bigger. And, people laugh at me saying, oh, you got an English degree. What are you going to do with an English degree? Well, my books make more than double the median income in the United States. So that's what I'm doing with an English degree. So, but it took me a long time for that to happen. So, just kind of don't put all your eggs in the pharmacy basket. It's really volatile. Make sure that you've got a side hustle. Make sure you've got something else going on. I really think it will help you. So anyway, I will talk to you guys next week, and have a great rest of your week.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.